Imagine not being able to read the paper because your hands were shaking. Imagine not being able to read newsprint as your world faded to black. The National Federation of the Blind, Newsline, Indiana. Monthly Report. With your host, Lee Martin, and co-host, Florence Myers-McSwine.
We want to welcome you to the National Federation of the Blind Newsline Indiana show. And we just want to welcome you all for joining us once again. And we do have a great guest with us from the Veterans Administration, Ms. Deanna Austin. She's here with us today to share some great information. You don't want to miss it. But we want to talk a little bit about the National Federation of the Blind Newsline service. It's a free service that's offered to individuals that are blind, visually impaired, those that are print challenged, those that has dyslexia, and then even the deaf blind can now use the service. Once again, it is a free service, and with that particular service, we have over 460 newspapers around the country. We have 15 international newspapers, and we also have breaking news such as the ABC, the BBC, the CNN, Fox, Huffington Post, on and on, where individuals can read newspapers that are blind, print challenged. And Florence, I would say that, individuals that are in Indiana, have over 15 publications that they can read. You know, I enjoy reading the Indianapolis Star. We have readers throughout the state that we get comments from, and they're enjoying the publications, having it right there at their fingertips, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week free. So Florence, you want to tell a little bit about the magazines?
Certainly will. One main thing that kind of got my attention was free, and it is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, what I like about the magazines is it is a variety of magazines. It's for people of every lifestyle, as I always say. If you're a senior and you want to read some things that are going on for seniors, there's AARP magazines. There's Consumer's Digest magazine as well. There's magazines for people who are into athletics, WebMD, Shape magazine. There's a couple people that are diabetic. There's Diabetic Forecast, Diabetic Forum. There's a list of magazines, and for people who are into technology as well, there's a PC magazine. So whatever their lifestyle, there's a magazine for those individuals, Lee.
Yeah, particularly the children's new magazine that we have out now. So that's a great magazine as well.
Now that magazine, for some reason it just slipped my mind, but that is Stone Soup magazine, and now that's written by children all over the world, Lee, and it says the average age of the children the age of 13, so it's a very good magazine.
Yeah, and the children can write in and get their own stories published as well. So it's a great magazine, and we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with more information and with our guest, Deanna Austin, a visual impairment service team coordinator. So stay tuned.
Thousands of Indiana residents feel isolated from the world due to vision problems. Thanks to the National Federation of the Blind, visually impaired Hoosiers can hear newspapers, circulars, and magazines from across the globe.
I'm a Vietnam veteran. I'm blind. I read Stars and Stripes on NFB Newsline.
Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
Subscribe free to NFB Newsline.
I'm Danny Wayne Beamer, Program Manager of the Elder Blind Program at the Will Center in Terre Haute, Indiana. I introduce the NFB Newsline to seniors in 13 southwestern counties in Indiana. I also utilize the NFB Newsline for my radio station public affairs shows. The NFB Newsline, experience it today.
Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
We are the nation's blind, and we read NFB Newsline.
It is our pleasure to welcome you here to our program, the National Federation of the Blind Newsline Indiana show. And as we stated, we have a terrific guest that's been working very diligently in our community for blinded veterans. She wears a hat, so many different hats, and she has a plethora of information to share. And we just want to welcome you to our show, Ms. Deanna Austin, Visual Impairment Service Team Coordinator. So, how are you today?
Very good, doing well. Thank you for having me here today.
Well, we just want to thank you for coming on to our show today. We have so much information to cover, and you just have been a star in our blinded veterans community. And as a blinded veteran that utilizes the service on behalf of myself and the number of veterans that you have helped, I just want to say thank you, Deanna.
Thank you.
Because without your help and without your truthfulness to us veterans and helping us out in moments of true despair, I don't know where I would be without this particular service. And I just, can't say enough how proud I am of you and the service that's offered to blinded veterans.
Well, thank you very much.
So what is the Visual Impairment Service Team Coordinator's responsibilities?
Well, it's a position at the VA Medical Center, and the goal is to help veterans with vision loss get what they need. And it's so awesome that it's there. Many years ago in the 40s, our veterans were coming back from World War II, young veterans with blindness, and there weren't a lot of services available. So back in the 40s, rehabilitation centers were created for veterans to learn how to live life with vision loss. And we're celebrating our 70th year of that in the VA. And a visual impairment services team coordinator, our role is to ensure that all veterans with vision loss get what they need and get the services that are available to them in the VA Medical Center or in their local community.
Now, how many veterans would you say that you serve?
In the Indianapolis area, the Indianapolis VA serves about 500 veterans who are low vision or legally blind.
Now, this service, you say, is celebrating 70 years. And I know that, wow, time flies by. 19 years ago, I was introduced to the service after I lost my sight. And as a veteran, I came in not knowing how to cope with blindness, not knowing anything about blindness other than I'll never be able to see, and I'll never be able to do, at that time, I thought I'd never be able to, live a life, a wholesome life at all. And I met the then coordinator, Mr. Tom Grimelsman. And he introduced me to so many things. And we have here on our set something as simple as telling time, a talking watch.
Yes, I brought one.
And you brought one. So now let's could you just demonstrate that watch?
Well, the talking watch, and really, at the end of the day, probably the top things are driving, ceasing driving. And I would say second is the ability to continue to tell time. And that is might be a small thing, but when you can't see well, telling time is extremely valuable. We all want to know what time it is. So a device is a watch that talks. Now this watch that I have has larger dials, so a lot of veterans with low vision may be able to see the dials, the hands, because it's on a nice white background and large black letters. But the other part of the watch is that it will tell the time. So a push of a button, and then it's going to tell what time it is.
The time is 11:32 a.m.
And then also it has a button for the date. It's going to tell today's date.
Today is Wednesday, August 8th, year 2018.
Now, just putting something like this in the hands of a veteran, it just immediately gives them a sense of independence. They no longer have to ask, what time is it? And this can make a huge difference in their road to learning how to live life with vision loss. Another one that I brought was a pocket watch that's a tactile pocket watch or a Braille pocket watch. So maybe a person doesn't want to have the talking feature. They may look at that maybe as a little bit disruptive. So they may have the ability to learn how to touch the watch face, and it has dots, it has tactile markings, and then the hands can be felt. And with some instruction that is given, a person can usually have some success in using a Braille watch or a tactile watch.
You know, you are absolutely right when you categorize the importance of losing your sight. The first thing that really did impact me was not being able to drive again. And I often tell people that I call it my Maxwell House coffee theory. I didn't want to quit driving. And so I actually risked driving till I had my last drop of sight. And in the Maxwell House coffee, it's a commercial that always stated that. Good to the last drop. And that's what I did. I drove to the last drop of sight when I knew that it would be dangerous for me and other pedestrians. So I tell you, the talking watch, when I was introduced to it, it gave me a self-reliance, some independence, and just a little bit of hope, something just that simple, you know, gave me that much hope. And I tell you, with the service that you guys provide, once again, I cannot say anything negative about it, and it has helped me and numerous other veterans. We're going to take a short pause, and we're going to be right back with more information. We're going to find out how Deanna, which also copes with sight loss, how she has come down the path of independence for her own self. So you don't want to miss it. We'll be right back.
If you or someone you know is visually impaired or print challenged, the National Federation of the Blind has a resource you need.
I am a CFP practitioner, and I happen to be blind. I rely on NFB Newsline to keep me current with Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times.
Hoosiers can hear Indiana magazines, circulars, national magazines, and information from across the globe. Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
We are the nation's blind, and we read NFB Newsline.
As I travel the nation, I read NFB Newsline.
I live in Valparaiso, Indiana, and I listen to my local news on NFB Newsline.
As a student, I enjoy reading current events on NFB Newsline.
Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
Subscribe free to NFB Newsline today.
Welcome back to the National Federation of the Blind Newsline, Indiana, with our guest, Miss Deanna Alston from VA. We call it Fruita Bush Hospital here, and welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Now, Deanna, now your position at VA, I was thinking to myself, I said, that's VIP, as I think of. Very important person over at VA. You touch the lives of many people, especially the blind. Now, how long have you been in that position?
I've worked at the VA Medical Center for 9 years.
Okay, as a coordinator?
Yes, yes, I came in, the gentleman before me, as Lee had mentioned, he had been there for 26 years in this position, and he retired, and I came on board at the Veterans Hospital in Indianapolis in 2009.
Okay, and you mentioned that it serves many people here in the state of Indiana. Now, Deanna, what inspired you to become a, what is it? I want to make sure I'm saying this right,
Visual Impairment Service Team Coordinator.
Yes.
Well, a little bit of history. I myself have vision loss, and I was born with vision loss. I grew up in a family, large family in South Dakota, and life moved along. And when I started school, I couldn't see the chalkboard from the front row, but my mom made sure I sat in the front. This is in the 70s, and life moved along. I tended to develop some pretty good memory skills and dictation skills because I wasn't really seeing the board. My parents took me to the eye doctor, but there wasn't a lot that could be done, and they weren't really introduced to any services that were available. So I decided to go to my first year of college, and that was in northern Indiana, and we worked in a church, and the church had a blind department. And I thought, well, I can't see very good, so, I think I'll volunteer there. And when I participated in their program, I was so fascinated by people who are blind or visually impaired. They knew maybe right where the trash can was to throw something away, and they were reading Braille. And I met a young boy who was 8 years old and had been blind from birth, and he just, did whatever he wanted and ran down the street and just anything he desired. And I thought to myself, well, I'm not sure what it all looks like, but I want to work with people who are blind or visually impaired. So I made that known to my grandmother, and she sent me some information about universities that had the specialized field of serving the blind and visually impaired. Well, I was already in college, so I decided to stay at the college I was at, and I would pursue services for the blind and visually impaired at a graduate level. So I attended Western Michigan University and pursued a master's degree in vision rehabilitation therapy. And that's really teaching a person who's blind or visually impaired all the ins and outs of daily life. How does a person cook with vision loss? How do they clean? How do they take notes, learn Braille, enjoy life with leisure activities, cooking in the kitchen? And so when I pursued that, it just told me even more that this was what I wanted to work in this field. And myself having vision loss, well, it just was a real natural fit to work with people who are blind or visually impaired, and also myself having vision loss.
You were living it.
Yes, yes. I also during that time, needed some help myself. In Nebraska, where I was going to college, I wanted to volunteer with people who are blind or visually impaired, and when they asked why, I said, well, I have some vision loss. And before I knew it, I was working with vocational rehabilitation. I had told them I wanted to work with the blind, and I had a wonderful voc rehab counselor. He actually took me to the Nebraska School for the Blind for a day just to visit. He also took me to the Nebraska Rehabilitation Center to see what that was like for a day. So he really gave me a good introduction of what the work would be like. And I just continued to pursue working with the blind and visually impaired, and I received my master's in blind rehabilitation from Western Michigan University. And then we all know when we go in the field that it's important, if we're going to pursue the career, we need to go where the opportunities are. So a lot of my classmates, we left our hometown to go to Michigan to go to school, and then we pursue our career somewhere else other than maybe where we were born or raised. So the opportunity here in Indiana came along. I had moved out to Indiana, and there was a position that was open working with people who are blind or visually impaired in the home. And I did that for 10 years. And then I worked at a rehabilitation center here in Indianapolis. And then I came to the VA in 2009. So it's been a real good progression as far as myself getting to learn about all the technologies and benefiting from them myself as a person with vision loss, and then also now, working with veterans who have vision loss.
Mm-hmm. Now, excuse me, prior to college, now, had you used any of the tools yourself, such as the watch or perhaps a cane?
I did not know any of that existed. Maybe back in the 70s, I don't know, I just wasn't ever introduced to any services in the 70s and 80s, all throughout my high school. It only began after I had the desire to work with the blind or visually impaired. It began when I contacted the state of Nebraska to volunteer. And then that person had the wherewithal to ask, why would you like to volunteer? And my answer was, well, I have vision loss, but I'd like to also work with people who had vision loss. And that gentleman helped me to pursue services. So then vocational rehabilitation helped me in Nebraska. And then when I moved to Indiana, I also pursued vocational rehabilitation services, and they assisted me with bioptic driving. So I didn't know if I could drive, but it was something that I was able to do. So I've been a bioptic driver, which are some special glasses that I wear for driving, and I've been a bioptic driver for over 20 years.
Would you want to show us those bioptic glasses?
So I can put them on really quick. So what it is my regular lens that I would wear is in the pair of glasses. They kind of look like an older pair of like army glasses. On the top of the glasses is a telescope or a carrier lens. So it's sort of like looking through a binocular. And I had to learn how, like if I wanted to look at Florence, I would put my head down and look in this small area to look at her better. Driving involves large objects, cars, people, but if you want to see a street sign, or if you want to see something very far away, or if there's a construction zone, then as you're driving, you go down into the bioptic and get a glimpse, and then you go back up and use the regular vision. The program is very limited on who qualifies, so there's only a real select group that are going to qualify for the bioptic driving, but it was something that I was eligible for, and it took about 9 months to pursue to get my license. And I did all of this in Indiana, and I received my license, I think it was like May 23rd of 1996. So it was a real monument moment in my life to receive my bioptic driver's license.
Now, Deanna, who would a person contact to get more information on bioptic driving?
On bioptic driving, they're going to start with the eye doctor, and their optometrist or ophthalmologist would make a referral to the low vision optometrist. And the low vision optometrist is going to determine the appropriateness of that person for bioptic driving. How is their color vision? Is their vision stable, or does it change regularly? How are they with their visual fields? There's, again, a lot of parameters. And then once the low vision optometrist maybe gives the okay, then there's some more testing that's done. Testing reaction time and, maybe a behind the wheel driver simulator test that's done to just see, is that person appropriate? When I learned, I not only learned how to drive, but I learned how to drive with bioptics. So that was, I didn't know, which part of the blinker, is it down, is left, and, I just didn't know any of that. So not only did I learn to drive, but I also learned how to drive using the bioptic.
Now,
Wow. That is so impressive.
it is.
And, I'll have to take a short break, but we'll be right back to learn a little bit more prior to concluding this show and continue the conversation for the second episode. So, wow, I am impressed with this. So this is the first I really have been entertained with this, and that's very good information. So we'll be right back.
If you or someone you know is visually impaired or print challenged, the National Federation of the Blind has a resource you need.
I use NFB Newsline when reading Hammond Northwest Times.
Using NFB Newsline, I read the Christian Science magazine.
Dad, you read Jerusalem Post too.
Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
Live the life you want. Read NFB Newsline.
It's free.
The National Federation of the Blind knows that blindness is not the characteristic that defines you or your future. Every day we raise the expectations of blind people because low expectations create obstacles between blind people and our dreams. You can live the life you want. Blindness is not what holds you back.
We want to welcome you back to the National Federation of the Blind Newsline Indiana show. And we're talking with Deanna Austin, and she's sharing with us about the bioptic driving. So you have some more information to share with us before we conclude.
Well, the bioptic program has been around in our country for many years, but one thing to keep in mind is it's regulated by our state laws. So as an Indiana resident, I fell under Indiana law, and Indiana law had their parameters that I fit into and was able to have success and obtain my license. Other states vary. So of our 50 United States, each state has their own laws in relation to the bioptic driving. Another piece that I do is I go to the eye doctor on an annual basis to ensure that I'm still appropriate for the bioptic driving program. And then my license itself has some information on it that would be unique, so that if anyone looked at my license, it would have on there that other, and then when that was pulled up for the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, it would say bioptic driver.
Wow, so that is very interesting news, and we will continue this conversation in our next episode. So join us then, and we'll look forward to continuing our conversation with Ms. Deanna Austin, Visual Impairment Service Team Coordinator with the Veterans Administration. Thank you.
The National Federation of the Blind Indiana Monthly Report. For more information, go to nfb-in.org or call 855-963-6476. That's 855-963-6476. The National Federation of the Blind encourages you to live the life you want.